Avenged Sevenfold are featured on this month's cover of Kerrang magazine, and as part of that feature, the band conducted a wide-ranging interview. And one of the great things about Avenged Sevenfold is they're really transparent and they hold nothing back in their interviews, and that's one of the things that makes them really interesting. And M Shadows during this conversation particularly really paints a picture of the state of record labels in 2024. And I've seen this for quite some time. Unless you've got a really good relationship with your label and you feel like they're doing a lot, I'm not sure that for what you're giving up, there's a lot of value added there. And the record labels, as you will see here in just a moment, are really not as imaginative as they once were. And so you have M Shadows really trashing his former or kind of still label and saying that they essentially are taking a lot of money and their ideas are not that great in return. And the internet is rapidly evolving. Things like bands being featured in video games, of course, something we've seen repeatedly from Avenged Sevenfold, like being recently featured in Fortnite. And now, surprise, surprise, you have a band like Metallica also being featured in Fortnite. You have a band like Slipknot being featured in Dead by Daylight, which I think is a perfect feature for them in that horror game. But there's so much happening and there's so many new opportunities opening up for bands that I really think going forward, it's going to be an exciting time to see new ways that our favorite bands could be featured. But here is some of the really interesting details from that interview. And you can read the entire thing because they go through a lot of important details throughout their career. I've linked to that in the description. But let's take a look particularly at what M Shadows had to say about record labels in 2024. Now, first, if you want to have an idea of what Avenged's relationship was like with their label, back in 2016, they took on their label, Warner Brothers, because of the so-called 7-year rule as it relates to contracts, which basically says you can't put someone in a contract for an unlimited number of years. So they were like, we've had this deal for 7 years, and so we're going to get out of it. So this is a band that definitely understands the upside and downside of dealing with a record label. They're still with Warner Brothers through all of that. But M Shadows has a very clear perspective on what he feels that labels even have to offer in the current environment. I also want to say, in some ways, I think that M Shadows is probably a nightmare for record labels, because if you talk to him, you can tell he's very intelligent and he really understands everything that's being said to him. And I think sometimes maybe record labels, they show them things that maybe impress a lot of people that maybe for someone like M Shadows, who has a real comprehensive understanding of the game, might not be as impressed. And as he says in this interview, he likes to look at everything. He likes to look at how much money the label is getting off of everything they do and then what they're providing in return. And I know for me personally, if I was in an arrangement like that with a record label and I felt they weren't really the innovators in the situation, and when you look at M Shadow's understanding of tech and not just current trends, but future trends, I imagine that he probably felt in many situations that he was actually the person that had the better understanding of current digital age marketing. Here's more. So he told Kerrang, we were one of those bands who have actually survived releasing 8 records for a major record label. And so we've seen a lot, and we've seen the numbers, and we've seen the ways that corporations pretty much control art. And it's an interesting, weird sort of dynamic, but you're going to get people involved who take money off the back of art. And one of the things that happens is that the artists say, leave me alone, I want to create. And that's fair enough. I get that. But my own brain works a little differently. I like getting into the technology and the weeds of the contracts that we sign. I like seeing the deals. I like seeing how much somebody is making off of me or our band, where it's fair and where it's a little egregious. And so again, as I mentioned, I bet record labels usually have artists who are more like, I'm just going to focus on the music and let you all handle the business. And so they don't really get down into the weeds of what the services are actually being provided to them versus what they're actually giving up. And in the digital ecosystem today, when everybody has their own chance to build an audience, and when you add to that the costs associated with creating music are lower than they've ever been, you really start to question what you're getting in return. And this is definitely something you're seeing from a lot of labels these days, where a lot of the signings are based on people who have already established their own audiences. And M Shadows says here that his label was trying to push the band to have a viral TikTok moment, and he just wasn't into it, and he started to question what he was even getting from his label. He says, So now what they do is they go to TikTok and they take someone who's already gone viral, but who doesn't have a label, and they wrap them up into a shitty deal. But they can't do anything with them. When Avenged Sevenfold were on Warner Bros., they were trying to figure out how to create a viral TikTok moment. What? I'm a 42-year-old man. I'm not trying to figure out how to do a viral TikTok moment. I'm sorry. You're going to take 24 cents on our dollar and that's all you can do? Come up with a fucking fake viral TikTok moment? I'm telling you right now, he is definitely spot on about this. If I was signed to a label and that's all they could bring to the table was, hey, we're going to help you go viral on TikTok. And then what? All that money for that? I mean, you could go to some young person who's just savvy at social media and they could probably do more for you these days. So a person like M Shadows, who understands technology better than most people, is going to pick up on this stuff very quickly. Whereas maybe someone who's focusing nonstop on songwriting is maybe not going to consider, oh, going viral on TikTok. It's just unfortunate, because really at the end of the day, those young and upcoming artists don't necessarily see this. And then by the time they've signed their deal, it might be too late. Now, I'd strongly encourage you to check out what Avenged Sevenfold is doing with Death Bats Club. It's unlike anything I've ever seen, and they continue to refine it and improve it. It even has a battle pass style system. I think a lot of other bands are looking at what Avenged Sevenfold is doing and thinking of how they can implement a similar fan club system where you actually get something tangible in return, like literally just getting to hang out with the band. It's really, really cool what they're doing. This week, Avenged Sevenfold is headlining Download Fest. We wish them all the best. That is your latest update here from Rockfeed. Be sure to subscribe with notifications on for the latest news and updates about your favorite bands.